Thirst is the worst.
Thirst the worst, bitch.
What I'm thinking is that Greg's thing, Pyle's more specific thing about moving toward switching more, and as we build restorative approaches, our staff get used to it, learn how to do it, and be successful at it, we'll be better, and we'll get back. And one of the issues about with
I
you,
used to work for YWCA, and during the MMSD trainings, they are not compliant.
but they're not good. You're right, they're not good, but we're working on trying to get them better.
That's why
You're
I
absolutely right. They're not good. I went to some too. They're not good. We need to make them better. To answer your question about what happened between Wayne and now is that it's because of, very simply, it's because of who Wayne was and who Greg was. They didn't want to be cops when they were in school, but they were. They wanted to be something else. And that's not what the majority of them did. They were still cops. These guys acted like they weren't cops, but they had the stuff on. They were good. Then next 3 years you get someone who does it different. And that's been part of the problem that I think we need to address and change. Well,
this is all
transitioning to something.
Protection and protecting the kids. Y'all all at a level all over these kids. These kids ain't understanding all this y'all talking about. Cause I ain't always understanding.
So,
who are y'all helping? The police ain't gonna be doing nothing but in there scaring the kids. Put some pay. What happened to truant officers and hall monitors and all this? Then y'all gonna have whole police at school with guns on their side scaring the kids.
Yeah, you're right. All that stuff. You're right.
Kids, put the police in the
That there was a teacher who was sexually assaulting students at East High School. He did not help that.
That's true.
Ain't nobody sending their kids to
Okay,
school with
all right,
no whole
Barbara,
school full of
this-
police with guns on their side.
If you don't close this up, I
All
want my
right, come on.
17 seconds.
Oh, we heard you. Let us continue our discussion here. Barbara, thank you.
And ain't nobody saying that. We worried about our black
It's not
people.
true. We're saying
It's
that.
not even.
We're
It
saying
ain't the
that it's
same
not
people.
implemented
There were
properly.
cops
I
in
know
schools
that.
when I grew up, but they were human being cops. They looked like me. They looked like my father. They cared about me and what happened to me when I left the building. They wasn't trying to end things for me then.
And they
All
were
right,
looking to lock me up
Barbara.
and send me nowhere to jail.
Okay.
Well, what's
anyone
gonna
wanna comment on
happen
this?
when the police shoot and kill one of the kids at school? Like my grandson, that might take off running because he's scared of the police from something he's seen on TV, and they say, stop young man, and he don't stop and keep running, and he's 8 years old, and then you shoot him down in the school. What's gonna happen then? What the school board gonna do then besides give their mom some money? I don't want no damn money. About you done shot my grandson down in school. Y'all finna start a riot.
And y'all are still in the children house walking
And I'm gonna leave.
to scare them.
I'll follow, baby.
Are you hearing this?
Okay. Well, he can plug in his thoughts. Ty, you said you can plug in your thoughts as we discussed, but we do have 5 specific things. So I'd say let's get on this and get moved.
So you all have us all here wondering and thinking, but you all already know if or not you're gonna place police in the school. Just say if you is or if you ain't, because you already know, so you're trying to get to when it's gonna happen or what.
Yeah,
Is it gonna
right.
happen?
Yeah, let us get to it.
I'm saying,
Hold on, but then here's the deal though, and I'm with you, I get the
tell us the
frustration, but
date. That's all we need
but
to
the
know,
point,
because
though-
you're already gonna do it.
I'm gonna do this and look at, the deal here is that we don't make that call. That's the thing, is that we don't get to make that decision, so the school will make the call.
Hold on. Look, Barbara.
On a personal level, as a Marine veteran, and as, you know, I don't understand, I have not heard a compelling case as to why you need the capacity to kill children in the places that you're educating them. There has not been anything that's said along those lines to us here. You gonna let me finish, man? Because you just keep talking, and it's like, Tyrell, let me talk. You gonna get your chance. You know what I'm saying? So just, I love you.
Let's go.
Now,
I'll stand right over here, excuse me. That's all right.
Keep going. You got the floor.
I'm reading my things, Tyrell. Now look, so I don't get that, and so like the thing is, there's not been a compelling case in anything we've done that's explained to us that we need the capacity to kill children in the places that they're being educated, and I feel like it's antithetical. I do feel like that having patrol. I don't know that we need patrolled officers. I don't know that we need armed police patrolling the hallways either. I don't know that removing the ERO contract is going to end police being in the schools, and I think it's important that we take that in consideration, because what you have right now as a school board is you have some degree of purview over the relationship of the police officers and the school. And I think ceding that purview, I would think very critically about whether or not that's a strategic, if it's tactical in terms of what we're actually trying to do. Because as the General Counsel explained, if a teacher calls the police are going to come. That's not what we're talking about. The idea here, so from what he also said, is that if there were police on site, that those complaints could be routed hypothetically through that individual on site, versus having a police come and responding to those things. I think these are very important things to consider and to look at. Every school that there's been a shooting at, there have been police, at least high schools, there have been police at the schools. So the gentleman that talked and brought this up is that the police being in schools is not preventing anything. I should say something though, because there is a truth about hard targets, and this is a thing that it's very difficult to negotiate the hypothetical to the degree to which having police there has deterred X amount of things happening, and I will see that point. I will also say though that if you are actually trying to create a space where you need a person to respond to a, let's hypothetically say, a shooting, the place that you want to be is you either want a perfect panopticon, a perfect circle, and you want to be in the center, or you want to be outside of the facility. And I can explain this tactically, that if you're actually trying to get into a space to deal with a violent incident, you don't actually want to be in any other part of that thing. You want to have a COC, or you want to have something that's at the periphery of the facility so that you can get into the place as necessary. And I think this is something that has to be considered. I gave a number of recommendations either way in terms of considerations. I think it's, if the contract is terminated, we need to establish a separate protocol codified through an MOU or contract that's going to dictate and determine how the police are going to relate to the schools when they show up. Because as we just heard from the General Counsel, there's a good chance they're still going to show up. And so I don't think that our accountability and oversight ends with whether or not we have a contract. So if we do that, we're going to need that anyway. I think, I mean, there's a number of things in here. I guess if we were to keep the contract, I think oversight of the contract, transparency, and access to data, another one of these things that we saw, getting data from the school district has been very difficult, and to get questions answered. And I think in a general sense, nobody wants to say, none of our elected officials want to take responsibility for the fact that they do have oversight over the police. And this is our school board, and it's also our city council. And there are many things that they can do to have at least more transparency. The fact that we couldn't get data and we couldn't get access to the schools, and we have a school board, this is a committee by the school board, I found very telling and problematic. I think the other thing is to look at in having community review and oversight and transparency, where you're looking at how the police are being dictated, and when you're looking at the review in the future, in perpetuity, to look at whether or not we should continue this contract. There should be I think a more nuanced approach to community engagement and outlook than maybe our outreach than what we did here, because I see, Tyrell, I don't mind when people come and yell at us. I've been through incarceration and war, and I don't see young people being involved in democratic processes as a problem. I don't care how loud what they say to me. But I understand, and that goes for everybody. And I think that's a good thing. You know, like I said, I'm a war veteran, Tyrone. I don't mind when people are involved in democracy, you know what I'm saying? But
Corporate boards, and we don't do that.
well, all right. Anyway,
Sell beer, man.
the point is, I think the public reporting should be more honest and transparent. If we were to keep this thing going, I think we need to really examine the role that they're playing and why it seems that school leadership is punting in terms of their role of oversight, classroom management, disruption. Things we noticed, I think that is kind of proof is in the pudding stuff, which is that a lot of the diversity in terms of the, on a number of levels, and I mean this in a multi-dimensional way of looking at diversity, that we don't have a lot in terms of people who can respond to these things. And so there's a very nuanced distinction between, I mean, who are we need police to be safe from whom? And I think that there's this idea of an external threat that's being perpetrated, and I get it. in the proliferation of guns, I mean, I get all these things, but then there's also this thing where we're just afraid of, we're afraid of our own children. And I think that those two things are being conflated, and I think sometimes deliberately. So we're using the former to hide the latter. And I think that's something that we need to be mindful of. So by having the, I mean, we're trying to, you know, save, well, you get what I'm saying here. Is I think there's a lot of things about fearing our own children, and I really would ask us to examine what that's really saying, right, and what we're doing here. At the end of the day, and I, you know, this, like I said, this is 9 pages long.
Can I ask you one thing?
Yeah.
Number 2 right behind you. Can you comment on that a little more?
Yeah, that's what I said at the beginning.
I know. Can you comment more, as particularly around what do you mean by liaison officer? Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, the story, to go back to what the general counsel said, and this is somewhere you're gonna, I go back to this. When we were kids, we didn't have, at East High School, we didn't have an ERO. We just had a police officer that was a neighborhood officer that was responsible for the area. Now this guy, he ain't much like me, I ain't much like him. He, you know, like I said, they charged me with a felony charge when I was 18 years old. It almost ruined my life. And
anyone else want to comment on Barbara?
I think, you know, to the point that Barbara made, I think the challenge here is that we can't, you know, in terms of interactions, you can't.
You'll be up
Can't legislate, you know what I'm saying? You can't say.
Yeah.
Going forward, so shifting our whole school thought, our staff members towards a restorative practices in each school and in each classroom is not as easy as it sounds, especially when you've got many staff entrenched in a way of doing things that have been kind of moved to in over the 20 years, particularly as in our high schools, on how they use or misuse the ERO program.
So where's your implicit
moving
bias
towards this
training?
is where we say we're gonna go. So our proposal should match. We're already stating we're gonna go. We need to increase, and so I thought that Greg's proposal early on about shifting full-blown, all-in restorative practices of the whole school district matches what our proposal should line up with that. So there are specific things about how we do that. Anything happens in the school, you don't get a ticket and gotta go, but you go to restorative practice that we have in place in school.
But they're cutting the funding right now.
Well,
So how does that make sense?
right,
They're
well,
gonna take them out of the
we
community
got
center.
budget issues going on, and we have to, if we acknowledge this as a priority, we can't be doing it. And I'm a school board member, you can yell at me if we cut that shit, because I don't want that. I want to improve money in that, and I'm one of 7, so you got 1 on your side on that one.
If something doesn't go right, and they can say, well, we had this committee, but ultimately we don't make the final decision. So again, I asked before, how much of our recommendations is gonna be weighted when the school board makes the decision, and I couldn't get a straight answer, and so I would like to know.
Well, because you have school board members who leave, who are told to take a 5-minute break, and who don't come back
You screamed at
to do
me.
their job
Yeah,
that they've been elected to do.
Yeah, all right,
Excuse me.
Heather Finch.
Versus the worst.
Subscribe, bitch.